a part of my story is very similar to the outside world. It looks like, oh, everything's going right. Well, I was suffering and there's no one I could go to. When I did go seek therapy, they were looking at me like they wanted to study my brain. Like it was like I'm an enigma. So I felt like I was in a fishbowl of like a test tube kind of thing, which was no fun. Hello, and welcome back to Beyond Common Business Secrets. I have an amazing guest with us today, Nisha Lehmann she is such an amazing advocate in the area of mental health and wellness. She is an innovative app developer and brings so much knowledge and wisdom to the table in all of these areas. And we have been talking about getting you on Beyond Common Business Secrets as a guest for 6, 8 months now. So I am so happy and grateful that you're here, Nisha. Welcome.
Yes, it's about time. I would
Right?
say
That
it's
maybe we'll title it this. It's about time, right? Because so much of this innovative work that you're doing is so amazing. And it is true. It's about time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's led you on this journey of mental
sure.
health, I mean, it's like those are interesting topics to bring together. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So by trade, I'm a technical developer. So I mean that's pretty boring. I won't go too much into detail on that, but no, that's how I earn the living in order to be able to do the fun things that actually bring more joy into my life. I would say what really stemmed the creation of the app is the fact that we all wear a lot of different hats. I believe I'm not only a technical developer. I'm also a mom. I'm also a sister. I'm also a wife. I'm also a mental health sufferer. And unfortunately, my mental health took a turn for the worse. Really, at probably the most inopportune time you can have that happen. I just had my first child, and I had just lost my job, so it at that point really felt like the walls were caving in quite a bit, and I was just looking for a way to pull myself out of whatever it was. I don't know if it was postpartum depression or if it was just very high anxiety or maybe burnout from the job. It seemed like a combination of all of these things, but I was really looking for a way to be able to talk to other people to just get second opinions about whether what I was feeling was okay, not okay, justified, ridiculous. I didn't know. I just wanted to be able to exchange and talk openly and freely with someone else who was suffering from maybe some of the same things that I was. And I'm a bit of a nerd. I do a lot of market research before embarking on anything. And I looked for quite a long time for a solution or anything really where you can connect with people anonymously, because when it comes to mental health, I think that's a very important factor. People shouldn't be forced or outed to talk about their mental health just because that's the fad thing to do, or that's the no popular thing to do. You have to do it on your own terms. It's the only way it's genuine. And I think anonymizing yourself is a really easy way to be able to be open and transparent about what's going on with your mental health. If you know that there's not going to be any blowback based on your gender or your ethnicity or any of these other factors that you would normally see. And in looking for these kind of platforms, I really found very little to nothing, at least during that time. And that was maybe about a year and a half to 2 years ago. Of course, there are social media groups and attached to your Facebook profile, and a thousand different types of social media apps where you can post great pictures about yourself. But for me, what was really missing was the kind of genuine connection you have with someone when you talk about something that's private, that's intimate, that had a real impact on you. And to be able to do that is already a pretty harrowing thing, but then to be able to do that and to actually have the reassurance from the other person that you're not alone, you're not suffering from this by yourself. No, that someone else experienced the same thing and maybe tried something and can offer you a piece of advice or some feedback that you may not have thought of yourself, or that a therapist can't tell you, because it's not like when you go to a therapist they have the remedy for every single mental health issue. More often than not, they're kind of experimenting and trying things with you as well to see what works, what triggers you, what doesn't. um, and so for me, I really felt like at that time the outlet that was right for me was a kind of peer-to-peer network where I could connect with people. We could talk specifically and privately about mental health issues, or about my mental health issues at least, and I could get some feedback and some help that way. Because therapy at that point really wasn't right for me, not only because I had just lost my job and it's just prohibitively expensive where I live, but also I don't know, I'm also quite skeptical and cynical of therapists anyway.
I'm going to
Because
ask about that. I'm glad you answered that before I even asked the question.
yeah,
I
well,
was thinking, tell me
that's just
more.
my opinion. I do not want to taint the opinion of your viewers. Maybe you have some therapists, and I have nothing against them, but I don't think that in this day and age, when we have multifaceted, multifaceted mental health issues, the way we look at it is so binary. It's like, okay, you have a mental health issue or not, and if you do, you go see a professional, and that's it. That's like the only avenue that's available to you, and I really find that amazing, because we don't do that with our physical health. We don't just trust our doctor. We get second opinions. We go to WebMD. We see what other people think of that doctor. No, we do our own research in order to really do what's right for our physical health. But with our mental health, I feel like it's much less. And what I really want Confidential Conversations to be, which is the app that was developed to this cause, or to this effort, let's say, is a platform for people to connect anonymously and to be able to get second opinions about whether they need therapy or not. How bad really is their mental health? Is it good? Does it help you more to be able to connect with your peers and talk through some of your issues with someone that gets you, someone that understands it because they're going through it themselves, or they've been better, they've been through it already, they've pulled themselves out, and they can kind of provide you a lifeline into what worked for them. So that's really kind of what I wanted Confidential Conversations to be, and that's the road that we're going toward with the app.
Well, I love the name. I absolutely love the name, the Confidential Conversations, because I think true meaning and connection in life is what we're missing, right? Like that's to me sometimes the root cause of all these
Yeah.
mental health suffering and challenges. As as a fellow female that has been a business owner, mom, going through all the things, I have a part of my story is very similar, to the outside world. It looks like, oh, everything's going right. Well, I was suffering and there's no one I could go to. When I did go seek therapy, they were looking at me like they wanted to study my brain. Like it was like I'm an enigma. So I felt like I was in a fishbowl of like a test tube kind of thing, which was no fun. And then I, you know, couldn't say, oh, I don't know what's going on, but this is not right. I wasn't feeling right about stuff. So, seeking out, creating connections and having conversations is what really got me through those dark times. So I would have loved, this is going back 10 years. I would have loved to have this app. So I am so excited that you have used your research brain and your knowledge of app to create something that is so deeply human and so needed.
Oh, thank you. You flatter me too much, I think.
Well, it's
But
just like, because
thank
that's the
you.
thing, right? Like we need to talk about what's going to bring us joy, not what's making us more depressed. And sometimes that's what happens in therapy. Like it's just like refiring up that same thing. Not always. I mean, I say the same thing. There are times and places for it all. Recently I've noticed a shift to a lot of clients I've had recently have left their therapy practices and got training as coaches because they're over the bureaucratic, so there's lots of shifts going on. And we do need a multifaceted, multi-layered approach to how, just because just I like, this is how I break it down, right? Just because I have all my limbs, right, doesn't mean I'm not suffering in some way. So that's where sometimes like the mental health goes, it's like unseen at times,
Of course.
where people don't act with as much compassion. So it's one of those pieces where how do we bring the same level of compassion? So
Yeah.
how would you suggest that we can, simplify this and bring a different level of compassion to this?
Well, there is, as you were mentioning, there is a part of it that is just being human. And I think there's an innate fear to be yourself online. I think that we're constantly kind of trying to be who other people want us to be online. I mean, I understand so well what you were talking about earlier when you were saying you were suffering, but you had to put on a face to your clients, to the people around you, because you can't really be vulnerable with them. You can't be vulnerable in a professional setting, definitely not, because it's seen as a liability for the company or for whomever around you, your bosses, whatever it is. That's why I mean, mental health at the workplace is really a completely different topic we could talk about for 2 hours. But it's so interesting that it's stigmatized in that way because so much of our mental health is based on our work life balance and is based on how happy we are at work. So I really resonate with that idea of, trying to find somewhere that you can just be authentically yourself. And I'm also a bit kind of, let's say leery of the fact that yes, when you're in an app or when you're online, you kind of are making a persona. You might be doing that in confidential conversations too, right? Because it's not natural to kind of open up to strangers about what you're going through. But what made it easier for me and what I believe makes it easier for others is if you have kind of one brave person in the group that's willing to talk about it. And if you have that person, suddenly the floodgates open because you can suddenly understand, oh, they're suffering from alcoholism too, or they're suffering from sexual assault, or they're suffering from catfishing or whatever it is, right? If you know that there's someone else in the group that's going through something that you have experienced, it makes it significantly easier to talk about it, which is why I believe therapists have to poke and prod you to get that information out, because you can't count on them having gone through the same thing you have. They will never be able to relate to you the same way someone who has been through it will be able to help you. And they might even have completely different perspectives on what you should do. So, how can we be more compassionate? We need to accept that mental health affects everyone, and it's not a negative. You will at some point in your life experience a mental health issue. And one of the primary examples of that is grief. I mean, I didn't even know that was a mental health issue, but it was classified as such just recently after the COVID pandemic
Yeah.
because so many people lost people they loved, myself included, right? And grief impacts you so significantly and so emotionally. I mean, I was amazed how it manifested itself at work, wherever I was. It's such a hard emotion to control. And you go through, for me at least, I went through stages of mental health where I was kind of happy and sad, and people must have thought I was like bipolar, I think, because I had very strong mood swings here and there. But I mean, it's just, I everyone will experience that at some point. Unfortunately, the reality is you will lose someone close to you and you will go through that. And isn't it better to be in a support group where your identity is protected, where you don't necessarily have to talk about it if you don't want to? You can simply listen to other people's stories, you can give advice when you want to, or as and when you get comfortable in the group, share your experiences. I mean, but there's absolutely no pressure on you to have to speak, which is what I always felt when you see a therapist, because it's just the two of you in a room. And the therapist is not going to say anything to you. It's up to you to kind of spill your guts and talk about what's bothering you. And so I don't know. For me, that's one of the reasons why therapy doesn't work for me personally. Again, not dissuading people, especially people who are suffering from very, very serious mental health issues, that suicidal thoughts and things like that. There are many, many, many prevention hotlines and numbers you can call to try to get help right away. But talking to survivors is honestly I think one of the most easy and natural transitions you can make when you have a mental health issue. Because when you're talking to someone like yourself, it's so much easier to open up. And that's really the hardest part when you have a mental health issue, is that initial open up about it.
Well, I loved what you said because the grief process is something that, whether we're willing to accept it or not, we're all going to go through it at some point. And it sounds like the confidential conversations model is like masterminding your way through grief. So you're almost going to be aware of the process that you're going to go through, whether you accept it willingly or not. You know, there are people that are trying to avoid the stages. And I love the idea of having other people that are at different stages, like other people that have already gone through pieces of it. I read recently, I think it was Forbes magazine that had a statistic that 92% of all business owners are affected by mental illness, either personally or indirectly. So it's like, it's one of these things that it can't go unnoticed. That is really high statistics of needing to have, more avenues, more ways to have better resources that people at all different stages of anything that they're going through from a mental capacity can have, like, resources and tools to get the help that they need, because everyone's different. Like, the one note doesn't work for everybody.
No, and it's a bit of a tragedy that it took us this long to figure that out, to be honest. It's like there are many things that have been mental health issues, but were never officially classified as mental health issues until post-pandemic times. But people had been like burnout is a really good example. People had been suffering from burnout for decades before that, but it was only after the pandemic classified as an official mental health issue. And the reason that happened is because of the great resignation that stemmed all of these people basically saying, well, screw you to the employer, because if you're not going to be able to meet my work life obligations, if you can't be even slightly flexible now that we've been in this pandemic, I'm not working here anymore. And I'm just so grateful that mental health has been able to come to the forefront in that moment, because people really started to say no, they're not going to accept the status quo anymore. It's not okay to work, to work yourself to the bone and give everything for your employer if they don't do something about your mental health, or if they don't take some responsibility for your mental health. There's a really great piece of thought leadership that we wrote, and it's on our website, confidconvos.com, where we talk about actually the ROI of employers investing into mental health. Because I guess from the employer side of things, there is a massive return of investment when it comes to investing into mental health resources for your resources. But no one looked into it until this great resignation thing happened. So it's interesting that even now employers are starting to look at mental health differently, and they're starting to, like, my employer gives 3 or 4 days of like mental health days or mental awareness days, where they're just days off for you to kind of take a break and recuperate, and really try to come full circle again. So I hope other employers are doing that as well.
I can remember as early back as my very first business, that was one of the differences about why people wanted to work for us, because we had, in like way before we had any money to afford any type of benefits package, it was, you had to take a day just for your own happiness, like a joy day. And we would even like allow you to like put funds aside, like, so you just like, this was like a requirement. We would help you map out saving up for vacation. And I remember other business owners going, why are you encouraging your people to take a vacation? I'm like, because that makes them enjoy their life more, which then they're here. Like, it just made logical
It's
sense.
amazing that
Like,
people even
we're
ask
serving
that. I
people
find it
from
so,
this
yeah.
greatest place of goodness in our hearts. And if we're not feeling that love and joy filling us up, like, what are you serving? So and it was always about helping people navigate this stuff, a lot of coaching and like navigating that. If you go and burn yourself out on your days off, then you show up for work more burnt out. So you have to make sure that you're kind of developing lifelong, habits that serve nourishing your body, mind, and soul. So it's really interesting that, yeah, it's definitely finally catching on. But anything, like even if you're a brand new startup, like something you can get creative around ways for this. And the huge corporations that like that should be the number one line on your health benefits package. It's like preventative, right?
Yes, in an ideal world, we would do that because most of the health insurance, and I believe you're sitting in the United States, but just
Yeah.
generally, I think globally, most of the employers will provide health insurance to their employees, physical health insurance, right? So why is there no plan that actually covers your mental health insurance? In most companies, your mental health is actually probably more important than your physical health because in the worst case scenario, right? If you break your leg or whatever it is, you could still work as long as your brain is functioning, right? But if you can't think straight, if you suffer from high stress, or if you suffer from financial duress, or if you suffer from I don't know, I'm trying to think of others, but yeah, anxiety or imposter syndrome is a good one. If you suffer from any
Mhm.
of these things, they're going to impact you significantly more than breaking your leg or an injury that you can recover from and you can see the recovery of, more or less. I guess that's
Right.
really the difference between physical and mental health. Is physical health is you can really see the recovery, you can see the bone healing, you can see that you can get a gauge of when you can use your arm again or walk again
Right.
or
Like,
so on. But mental health, it's I believe it kind of comes in waves. You can be great one day and you can be lousy another day, and it's a much slower recovery process. It makes way more sense for employers to actually focus more on mental health than it does your physical health. But that will take a long time to change, I would imagine, globally. But
right. Globally, it really
baby
will.
steps.
Right.
Yes,
Globally, it definitely will. So we'll definitely include the links to the hotlines you were referring to and the confident convo, like we'll include all those links because I think these are such valuable resources for everybody. And do you also have links to the app as well that we can share?
absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
The app is called Confidential Conversations. It's on Google Play, it's on the App Store. Download it, try it out. Really, really hope it works for you, and give us feedback about how you like it. That's how we improve, that's how we make it better. We don't exist without our users, really. We want this to be successful for them, for the people who are suffering from mental health issues, and we want it to bring value to you. So any feedback you can give us about how it's working, how it's not working, what you like, what you don't like, any of that is valuable for us.
So what would you say for someone that maybe, maybe they're tuning in right now and they're like, you know what? I didn't even realize it. Maybe I have been suffering because that seems to be just like what you said, it comes in waves. So what do you think are some simple things that you can walk us through that someone can just kind of take inventory to know what kind of help they need to get?
Yes, I'm always a little nervous when giving this advice because I can only say the things that work for me. Everyone is different, so but I mean, for me, taking 30 minutes and going for a jog or going for a walk or just kind of trying to get into nature does wonders for my mental health. I know you've probably heard it before, diet and exercise. Yes, these things, but just taking a break and going for a walk. Or if you've heard of walking meetings, I know this is like a now new trend where people take a walk and go on meetings.
Oh, I've been doing
I
that for years. I do not like to sit. Right.
Yes,
I'm like a walk, like, let's go. Let's walk and talk.
yes, I mean,
Like a
I have
photo.
the luxury of having nature very nearby where I live, so I can just very quickly escape into the woods or escape into a nice trail and just kind of really feel like I'm not in the city anymore, which I love. Another very easy thing you can do is put on the digital well-being setting on your phone. It turns your screen black and white after a certain hour, and it also mutes all the notifications you have. This was actually honestly something that changed everything after I had my child, because I was waking up all the time because my phone was going off, and it was making me go insane actually very slowly, because I have friends all over the world and they all message at different times, and whenever you message you hear and it's so loud, it wakes me up, and I after that I can't get back to sleep. And muting the notifications on your phone is such a simple thing to do. And once I found this setting, I've never looked back. I've had really much better sleep. I don't have to worry about it. When the screen goes black and white, I know it's kind of like, okay, it's wind down time for me. It means I need to put the phone down, walk away from it.
Yes.
More difficult than we may think, but put the phone down, leave it alone, walk away from it, be in the present moment. Um, and go to sleep, and sleep is a big one. I mean, for me, sleep is the game changer. If I need like 8 or 9 hours of sleep, otherwise I'm a basket case. So um, as long as I can get a decent amount of sleep every night, I really feel rejuvenated in the morning, and I feel like I always look at the day that it's kind of a new day. My mental health issues are not gone. I know that. I'm still recovering from a lot of what I had suffered through, and it's an ongoing process for 2, 3. It probably will be an ongoing process for the next 2, 3 years. But every day is a new day, and if I can wake up a little happier every day, that's already for me a huge progress. Because for me, it's the same as seeing the bone heal, right? If I can wake
Yes.
up feeling a
Yeah.
little bit better, a little bit more recharged, a little bit more positive, more optimistic about the day, it's for me the same healing that you get with your physical health.
Um, I have to absolutely agree with you about the digital well-being. I also have my computer, my iPad, everything set to no notifications so that I choose throughout the day too. I choose what I log into. Like I do not do notifications and I put my phone in a different room when I sleep.
That's a brilliant
I've
idea.
done it for 10
I
years.
don't have that luxury because somehow we have a lack of plugs in our house for whatever reason. So I do keep the phone next to me, but when the notifications are off, I don't notice it as much.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's a game changer. Like, that's when things started changing in my life. Like, it's just really funny, like,
Yes.
to hear, because you
Just
wouldn't think
simple
it would
things.
be
Yeah.
so big. And when I teach about morning routine and how it's the ritual that if you want to accomplish anything in life, that's the thing. It's the thing. Start with the morning routine. But so much of it, the setup for it is at night. It's the notifications, it's the phone, it's like getting all your stuff ready so that you have to trip over it. That's the only way to get out the door and go on a walk first thing in the morning.
Yep, exactly. I
So,
fully agree with you. Yeah, fully agree with you.
yeah, and
It's
it's
amazing what small things can make such a large difference. I mean, it has such ripple effects down the road. So,
yeah, and we don't realize it until you do wake up every day feeling a little bit better. And it is the equivalent of like, when you have your arm in a cast, it's slowly healing, but your mental, it's those little drops in the bucket every day. And I love that you've created so many amazing resources and tools for people that are going through various things. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that with the world. Because I know it's hard to show up that way. And if no one's told you lately, that this is what becoming a beyond common success in anything is all about, is sharing your personal experience. So thank you.
yes, thank you. It wasn't easy to get to this point either. So, but I think for those who are ready to take the next step, Confidential Conversations is there for you. And even if you're not ready, listen in. I think that was actually one of the big things for me, was just listening to other people's problems and really understanding how much I could relate to them. It really makes it so much easier to talk about your own. So, I mean, the only byline I can give you is it worked for me, or it's working for me. And if it's working for me, maybe it can work also for you. So I would just encourage you to give it a try and see what you think.
Thank you so much for being here, Nisha. We really appreciate it. And definitely check out the show notes to see where you can download Confidential Conversations and check it out to see if it's right for you. And Nisha, we'll give you feedback and we'll test it out. And I cannot wait to check it out. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.